Hello y'all, this is Regina. Welcome back to Regina's Crafting and More. I have a mug rug that I'm getting ready to test stitch. This is it right here. Now it has side panels in here and I provide the color stops for you to add those side panels. I did not bring the decorative fill into the side panels in case you wanted to use some pretty patriotic fabric here. I just put the stars on the side. This one is a three-piece, the sides and the center here. But I did take the fill all the way across all three panels, and they're done. It's done together. The decorative fill is done together. Let me hide this. Okay. So it does go all the way across, and the actual baseball stars and the bats stitch after the decorative fill. Now remember, this decorative fill is not meant to be an outline around the objects that are stitched in the decorative fill. It's just a fill that I have no control over how close these lines get to the fill. So anyhow, I think I am going to do this mug rug today, and let's get to the machine and get started. So one thing I did want to tell you, I have directions, but trust me, I'm not a direction writing person. I have videos on my YouTube channel. It's much easier to follow videos. But this does tell you need one piece of batting 9 inches by 6.5 inches. You need a centerpiece, this centerpiece right here, that is 6.5 by 6.5 inches wide, 5.5 inches high. And you need 2 side panels, 2.25 inches wide by 5.5 inches long. And your back pieces, you need 2 each, 9 inches wide by 5.5 to 5.75 inches high. And I just 2 each. Let me save this. So I already have all that, I think. Well, maybe not, but I will. So let's get started. All right, at my machine, I've got my 5x7 hoop. I've got tearaway stabilizer in it, and I have all my supplies that I need. All right, so I have my center piece, which has some little stars on it. I have my batting. I have my side panel pieces, and I have my backing fabric, 2 pieces. And I cut mine 9.5 by 5.75, whatever the instructions were, because I looked at the instructions. All right, so I'm going to use red thread just so that you can see it, and it's going to be covered up because it's got batting and what have you and pieces, so I'm not worried about it right now. So color stop number 1 is, oh hello, you got to send it to embroidery. There we go. Color stop number 1 is your placement stitch for your batting. Now I did this just in case you were using a smaller piece of batting, and you had it something that, oh, I think this will work. As long as you cover this part up and have a little bit of extension, I don't know why that does that, then you'll be fine. So I have a piece that I had down there in my scrap bin. I think I'm going to go press it. Alright, so I just need to cover up that placement line with my batting. So if you have a piece that you think might fit, you can try it and see. I just cut mine oversized, what the directions say, so that I know it's going to fit. So I'm going to tack this down. Color stop number 2, just tacks your batting down so it holds it in place. You don't have to worry about it slipping or anything like that. There we go on that little curve. It always does that. That's just too weird. Now you could put no-show stabilizer in your hoop. And hold on. Alright, it's finished the tack down. Now it's going to stitch color stop number 3, a placement stitch for your center fabric. So you're going to put your center fabric in here, so grab it. And you want it to overlap a little bit. So if you're using scraps, you know, once again, you've got a line that you can see, and use up those scraps that you have in your scrap bin. So I'm just checking here. Don't need a thread, a red thread on my white fabric. Let me check back here. Oh, I got plenty back there. All right, so I'm going to stitch this down so that it holds in place. Color stop number 4, tacks down your fabric. So you can trim this fabric back. It's going to be stitching a placement line for your side panel, so it's going to have another secure stitch on here. I'm just going to stitch it back a little bit, and this might not be, cut it back a little bit. I might not do it really straight, but I'm just going to leave a little bit of the fabric peeking out. And I'm not going to promise you that's a 1/4 inch, but we're going to say it is. And there we go. All right, so I'm going to put it back on. And I'm going to change, okay, this is going to do side panel. Sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. So the next color stop is going to stitch a line for the placement of your side panel. So I'm going to put the edge of my fabric on that straight line, line it up. You want to overlap down here. You want to have an overlap. Okay, you just want to line it up straight, have an overlap down here, and an overlap at the top. So I have one piece. I'm not going to worry about my overlap at the, well, shoot. I swear. You want to make sure you're lined up, because this next stitch is going to stitch a 1/4 inch away. That's going to be your seam allowance to, what am I doing? There we go. It's going to stitch approximately a 1/4 inch away from that placement line you did for your side panel. That's going to tack it down really good. And I give you the dimensions for those side panels. Hang on. So the side panel should be 2 1/4 by 5.5 inches long. So I'm going to trim my fabric, and I'm just going to go kind of along the same line I did my fabric. Okay. So now we're going to do color stop number 7, which stitches another straight line. Now remember, you're just lining up all it's doing is stitching right along this seam line right here. But it's a reminder, and it gives you a little bit of an extension. That was color stock number 8, telling you this is where your side panel needs to butt up to. All right, so I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to overlap at the top, line it up with that line, and I've got plenty at top. Stick that back on, and color stock number 8 is going to stitch your seam allowance for the side panel. All right, so I got my fabric folding pin. You don't, let's trim this before I go. So we're going to trim this away. All right, got some I can use some other time. So we're going to fold this over, and you could finger press it, but I use this little fabric folding pin, and it just puts a little bit of water on there with something else in it. I forget what's in it. Okay, and I'm going to use my fingernail to get a nice crisp line. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So you got to give it a little bit of a squeeze. You don't want to do too much. And turn it over and finger press on that line. All right, so now it is going to stitch all the way around and put your sides to your mug rug and hold down those sides. So I believe it goes that way. And I'm just going to hold that crisp line down and keep my side panels nice and straight. I'm going to do the same over here. You don't want any fabric getting folded in or up. You could tape this down. Alright, so I'm going to put in a very, very light silver to do the decorative fill, which is color stock number 10. When you do the decorative fill, unless you just really like to have that decorative fill really bold, hold on here, hang on. Alright, so like I was saying, unless you just really want your decorative fill to pop out, remember that the program has its stitch sometimes 2 times over, sometimes 3, depending on where it's going. When we create the decorative fills, it's one line. It doesn't go back and forth. We don't program it that way. The program figures out where it wants to go. So I've always put in the lightest shade in the color family that I want to use. So I'm putting in a very light silver, and I'm just going to stitch this decorative fill, and I'm not going to have you watch this whole thing stitch because I'll let it go to see a little bit of. Now this is the one from Baby Lock. This is not the one I created. And remember, the stars on the design are not meant to line up with the stars that you're going to be stitching. A little later down in the lineup. going back over it for the second time up there. Okay, so I'll be back when this is done. So I don't use a colored fabric here because I want the design to stand out. That's why I always use white in the center. And I just used a plain cotton fabric. I know some people like to use felt. So some people don't mind the design being, your subsequent designs being stitched over this. I don't particularly like for my decorative fill to be underneath my embroidery. So I use a method to eliminate that so it won't have any well, what is it doing? Because it's not supposed to have stitching down the center. Oh, darn. Alright, well, I didn't cut this design out, but I will before you get it. So it may show through my white baseball. I'm going to go over here in a minute and cut that out so I don't forget. Alright, so I wanted to show you how this stitching is going to do the decorative fill. So this is doing the side panels. This is just finished with the side panel over here, and it's tacking down all the way around. Now it's doing the decorative fill, and you see how it's left cutouts for the bats and the stars and the baseball here in the center, where it didn't have that before. So that has been changed and corrected, and now it would go in and it would stitch all the fill design. I'm going to speed it up. Stitching on the baseball, come back and do all the bats, and it leaves, it's supposed to be like a 3mm space around the bats. Alright, so that's what it ends up looking like. So I just wanted to show you how that has been changed. Alright, so I've put in kind of a very medium cream color so the baseball will show up. And hopefully the silver stars and stripes won't show through. On the design you get, that won't be inside that baseball. So hopefully my fill will cover that up, and if it doesn't, I'm going to be really upset. I'll use the mug rug. I'm not selling them. Alright, so I'm just kind of watching to see if it's going to cover up those lines. I hope. They'll probably shadow through, but at least it wasn't red. Alright, it's going to cover it up enough. Alright, so I'll be back the next day. Just kind of FYI, if this happens to you ever, you can put in the same color bobbin, and that will help give you a little more coverage. I can see the stitch lines, not the color, but the stitching underneath. I do see a faint star up here. I'm not going to worry about it. I've got red stitching that's going to come on this baseball, so it's, for me right now, that's no big deal. I'll be back. Alright, so I see one little part of a star, just the impression. I don't see the silver thread, so that's not too bad. But that's why I don't like to have that stitching underneath. So this is going to do the red stitching on the baseball. That's how the stitching, the red stitching does, and I'll be back. Alright, so I'm just finishing up the red stitching on the baseball. And now it's time to do the bats. Alright, so now that we're finished with the baseball and the red stitching, we're going to do the bats. So I'm going to put in this color for the bats. Alright, so I'll put in my tan, whatever you want to call it, for the bats. I guess you could use a dark gray or a medium gray for the stainless steel bats, but these are the old-fashioned bats. Let me just see here. Hold on, because I just pulled up my sheet. Alright, so we're going to... And I didn't have any of the stitching from underneath come to the top. So I'm hoping, because this color is a little darker, I won't have that issue with the bats on here either. So we have, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, say 6 bats. And it's just a fill stitch that stitches. The whole stitching time for this design, my machine says 34 minutes. I'm 16 minutes in. And like I said before, I went back to my machine, my computer, and I cut the holes so when you get this, there won't be any stitching underneath any of the bats like there is on this one that I'm doing. So I'll be back when this finishes with all the bats. Alright, so we're getting close to being done. We're stitching on the last bat. Now when the decorative fill, the stars and stripes, is when I've cut out the space for these, there'll be more stitching between the bats that actually shows up. You know, this would suffice, but if somebody used a lighter color than what I have, it might show that decorative stitching through the thread. So I like to cut that hole out so that it's not there. I don't have to worry about that kind of bleeding through, if you will. Alright, the bats have finished stitching. It turned out really nice. The next thing to stitch is stars. Now, I don't know how this is going to work. I didn't think this through before I put this busy fabric here. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the stars, and I'm going to do them in white. Hopefully they'll show up on this. I don't know. It's a gamble. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. Oh, no, these are the stars. Sorry. These are the stars that stitch on the mug rug, not, they stitch right on here. Let me rethread. All right, so I'm putting in this navy blue because the stars that are getting ready to stitch actually stitch in this white area. And this is color stop number 14. Holy moly. I didn't realize there were that many color stops. Okay, and they stitch, this stitches blue stars. Of course, you can skip them the way I've done it now, but next time there's going to be a hole. So you'll need to go ahead and stitch the blue stars. Or you'll have a funny gap. There's 5 stars. And I'll be back. So 4 of the 5 stars have stitched. We have 1 more that completes the, this is kind of turned opposite of what you're looking at. This is the top up here. I guess you could really turn it any way you want, but this is meant to be the top where the stars are. So this represents the stripes in the flag and the stars at the top left of the flag. Alright, so I'm going to change to my white thread because there's going to be stars in here. I have them in red, but you can do it based on what color of fabric you have on the side panels. Alright, so I'm hoping that these stars show up as stars. On this really busy fabric. I don't know if they'll show up or not. And there's 3 on each side. Yeah, they're kind of showing up. I don't like the way they're stitching. So I'm going to have to do something to remedy that. So I need to make a change on the stars. I'll be back. All right, so I've finished this. This is how it actually looked like this. Okay. And you can't see my stars in the side panels very well, but they're there. All right, so color stop number 16 is to place these pieces. These are, I have to look on my computer, 9 inches wide by 5.5 to 5 3/4. I think I cut them 5 3/4. So it's 9 inches wide, 5 3/4 this way. You fold them in half, and you put the folded edge to the center. So you want them to overlap. Okay, so these overlap. Can you see how much they overlap? Okay, so I'm just lining them up with the outside edge. And I'm making sure that they're lined up at the top and the bottom. And you want to put some tape on this edge. And I think it goes around this way. So at some point it's going to get caught. So you want to have something to hold that down. I use a medical tape. And this is a new roll. Trying to find the edge is a trip. Okay, so it's somewhere here. Oh, shoot. Let me see if I can see where it is. This is the hardest part, is trying to find where that edge is. No, that's not it. Oh, for crying out loud. I know there's an edge on here that, there it is right there. There it is. All right. Now, I just ordered this off of Amazon. I know Kimber Bell has has some tape you can order, but it's the same as this. Okay, you gotta get this off of here. There we go. And you gotta get this. This is the worst part, because you don't want to have this outer edge be constantly. There we go. All right, so there we go. Let me turn this light on. See if that sheds a little light on things. All right, so I take a piece of tape and I stick it right on the edge. If it sews over it, it's no big deal. And you just want to hold that down right on the edge. All right, so we're going to put the hoop back on. And I still have my white thread back on. And I usually like to advance it to 1 to where it's going to start. And you can see, hopefully, that it's going to miss that tape just a little bit. So I'm going to use my, what's the deal here? All right, so it's going to go all the way around and stitch that down. Pound on that hoop on the outside. I don't know why it does that. Always on that corner. And I think this might be a placement stitch. I'm not sure, because it's going to stitch again. Okay, so you just want to hold that down right there so that foot doesn't kick it up. And that might have been a placement stitch. To be honest with you, I don't have my directions with me, and I think that might have been what it was. So I'm going to stitch this one more time. Color stop 17 is the last one, and it just goes right inside this line. And it does a triple stitch to hold that real good. So this isn't going to come apart. And this is a 2-piece backing. I like this. It gives it a little extra cushion. Absorbability, I guess you could call it. And when this finishes, we're going to go to the cutting table and we're going to trim this up. I use my ruler and my rotary cutter. Finished. Once again, when it comes back around here, sometimes I put I'm going to do it. Sometimes I put a piece of tape over there because I don't want it to get caught. Because if it gets caught at this point in time, it's going to mess it up real bad. So you could hold it down with, you know, something like that. But it's easier just to put a piece of tape on there. And there we go. And that's it. So let's go to the cutting table. Alright, let's go to the cutting table and trim this up and turn it inside out. Hold on. Alright, so I'm at my cutting table. So this is the baseball block that kind of is a companion to this. You could make a hot pad out of this. You could make a small little wall hanging, whatever. And then this is kind of a companion block. Take this all out of here. And I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use my waffly rotary cutter. Okay, can you see that? And it works real good. So I'm going to put my rotary cutter on 1/4 inch on that line that just stitched. And I'm going to tell you, you have to use a motion like this to cut through all this. Push down real hard on your ruler. You're going to have to cut it again. Don't ever remove your hand until you know you've cut all the way through. I just don't push hard enough. I don't have the strength. Okay, so there we go. All right, so we're going to do that all the way around. I'm going to put my 1/4 inch on the line that's stitched last. And I pushed hard enough on that one. Okay, you could do 1/8 inch if you wanted, and I may have to. Oh, come on, really? You got a lot of layers you're cutting through here, so don't get frustrated with it. Toss away. That's toss away. You got your tape. I'm going to remove this tape here in the center that held that down. Okay. And one more trim. You don't have to use that little Okay, so let's see, is that going to be close enough? I'm going to trim it. Oops. Trim those little threads off. Get all this out of the way. So, one thing you do want to do is on these corners, you want to round these corners close. Like that. Okay, come over here and round this one. Round all 4 corners. And then we're going to turn this inside out. Sometimes this isn't so easy. And you want to push those corners all the way out. With your finger or something. Remember, you've got a lot of layers on here. And my nails are not helping. I've got time to have my nails done. So put your finger in the corner and push it out. Put your finger in the corner and push it out. There we go. Now, I usually take a chopstick, take the thicker end, and go around and poke everything out gently. Okay. Now remember, you've got a seam allowance in there. And you can roll this seam back. Throw that in there. You got a seam here. You're going to roll that seam back. Flatten that out. And see how you can't even see that backing? Let me go give it a press. Alright, so before you give it a press, make sure you've got those seams rolled back to the back. And that way your backing fabric doesn't show on the front. Let me give it a press now. Sorry I came back, but let me go give it a press. Alright, so here's my back. Nice and clean. See how that, you don't even see that backing from the front. As long as you roll these seams backwards, you can get a nice clean mug rug. Oops, and it goes this way. Sorry about that. That's how it goes. The star's up here in the top left. So that is your companion to this. You can use this to make a placemat, have a placemat, and your mug rug all coordinated like the placemats Crystal did. And she's going to be making this. She's been on vacation. So I did the applique. She usually does the applique work. She likes that. And made the mug rug. She had, when she used the other patriotic blocks that I did, that I created, the popsicles and the pie, she had some mug rugs that she made that weren't mine. So anyhow, I made this mug rug with her in mind, and thinking this would make a great placemat with your mug rug. So I hope you enjoy these. This is the Patriotic Applique Bat Balls and Stars. And this is your Patriotic Baseball blah, blah, blah. Same thing, mug rug. All right, thanks for watching and enjoy. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up and like and share. Appreciate it. Bye. Enjoy.